topic that we're dealing with today is perhaps one of the most important discussions of our time, and something that vastly divides opinions depending on who you ask. The reason that I wanted to pick this up on the big question is because it's something that I suppose all of us who are in corporate jobs, who are in the formal workplace face at some point or the other. We here ourselves have these internal debates and discussions. The great generational divide brewing at the workplace is now something we are all facing. Think of it this way. Right now, in most workspaces across not just India but the world, you have Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, all working under the same roof. Offices are now a melting pot of attitudes, priorities, and let's be honest, some major clashes. It's a corporate generational clash all the way through. Let me give you some common friction points. The biggest of all is the work ethic divide and the definition of what is a work ethic. While the older generation tends to see long working hours as badges of honor, the talk of 70-hour work week, 90-hour work week making headlines, Gen Z is pushing back hard. Now remember, when I say Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X, older generational, of course there will be exceptions, there will be people in each generation who feel differently, but this is a broad overview. Gen Z is not shy about what they are or what they feel is toxic work culture. They demand work-life balance. Many in this generation are vocal about mental health and burnout and feel that long working hours or work pressure is a hindrance to their overall well-being. A study conducted in the US found that 50% of Gen Zs feel burnout at work. 48% of them say that mental health support and policies are very important to them when considering a potential employer. And then there's the hiring debate. Some employees go to the extent of calling Gen Z unhireable. A report in the US found that 1 in 6 companies are hesitant to hire recent college graduates because of their reputation for being challenging to work with and difficult to manage. 6 in 10 companies fired a recent college graduate they hired this year, and 9 in 10 hiring managers say recent college graduates should undergo etiquette training. The generations or the various views differ on even basics like communication. I would say that those who are old school value formal mode of communication like email, which the younger cohort finds unnecessarily rigid, swears by formal WhatsApp, Slack, informal WhatsApp, Slack and emojis to keep it casual. So the big question we're asking today, is there a generational clash brewing in our workplaces, and how do we resolve this? To speak on this, I'm joined today by Rituparna Chakravarti, business leader, Ayushi Prakash Doshi, an advocate who I think recently you may have come across some of her comments online on this very topic. So we want to talk about the general issue with her. Akash Chauhan, VP and Head of HR at Chayos, interested in knowing his view on what he faces in this position as HR, and Riya Chopra, a writer who, for the context of this debate, is also representing the Gen Z view. So welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. Riya, I'm going to start with you for this very reason. And having said that, there's no black and white, of course. Everyone has a different take at different stages of their life. Gen Z will also at one point become in a position where they have to hire people and then have to ensure that they are giving the right output. Having said that, what in your view is the biggest friction point?
I want to just set a little bit of context first, something that you've already also pointed out, Tamanna. Every generation raves about the new generation when they have to work with them because they're using different ways of work and it's not your way, and hence you find it incorrect in various ways. That, to a large extent, I feel, is what is happening in the workplaces. You have a new generation coming in who has different kinds of working, different ways of working, and that's the cause of some of the bigger clashes that we see. Secondarily, a lot of the things that go viral on social media are essentially bad cases because those are the ones that invite debate. I am not saying there's no generational clash in the workplace, but things aren't as hard and fast as what you see online. a good case of someone saying, oh, I have a great Gen Z employee isn't likely to go viral. What is likely to go viral is, oh, this young person doesn't work and shows up late and he's sending me emojis and he's not telling me before taking leave, etc., etc. So what you see is likely a skewed representation of what the generation is doing. That being said, there is clearly a difference in Gen Z as workers as opposed to other people. And a large part of this is because of what something that in this realm of culture we call the perma crisis. Gen Z has grown up and now exists in a space where they are facing permanent crises day after day. And it's becoming more common to talk about them. We are facing the brunt of the environmental crisis, being told on the daily that our lifespan is getting cut short because of the air that we breathe and the water that we drink. We're living at a time when multiple wars are taking place in the world and we have to consume them on social media. We're living at a time when mental health is at the worst it's ever been. Look at the cases of loneliness.
But Riya, isn't that the same for everyone you work with? They're also living in the same environment and with the same wars and with the same threat to life and the same workload and mental pressure.
Entering the workplace, Gen Z now has a time to present a great reckoning where they're able to revert and ask the bosses what they're offering to them in terms of support. We haven't accepted what we are facing. We are willing to stand up and ask, this is what I'm dealing with, and is there a way a workplace can help me better? That is why the debate of mental health entered the workplace at all in the last few years. That is why today we have things like menstrual leave, we have things like mental health leave actually existing at workplaces, because people of my generation and a little bit of late millennials as well were able to actually stand up and ask bosses what is happening and why is there no support being given. Gen Z is vocal. Gen Z is willing to go on social media, go to bosses and actually talk about these things. That is why a lot of the debate is happening right now.
Okay, let me get Rituparna in on it. Is the debate happening because these issues have always existed, but previous newcomers to the workplace didn't have the opportunity to talk about it and this generation is vocal? Or are there newer issues that are representing themselves?
First and foremost, I don't think I'm here representing any generation. I work and I have always represented a sector which had to work with all the generations. And I think what's going on today is that we have to all acknowledge that this nostalgia or amnesia or this belief that my way or the highway, or my way is the only way that you work, and any other person's or any other generation's perspective is not. I think the truth lies in terms of how you will make it all work somewhere in between. I think there are many things that people from my generation or previous generations, we are holding on to realities which no more exist in workplaces and no one will ever empathize or relate to. And hence we should just stop playing that over and over again as a soundtrack whenever we are dealing with the younger lot. And even from youngsters' perspective, I think there has to be an element of humility in terms of the experience that the previous generation brings, and everything that they say and everything that the way they operate is not something which needs to be approached from an activist perspective. I think there are much of their wisdom actually is going to help the newer generation. So somewhere I think making peace in between is important. Mental health, stress, environmental issues bother every generation, definitely. But I do give it out that this generation is not like us. And I'm glad that they are not like us, because they can speak out. They are ready to ask why. They are ready to ask how. And sometimes that does make some of the older generations a little uncomfortable. But that's how change, innovation, and transformation happens. But let's not take it to an extreme. The problem is either extremity is harmful for workplaces, because finally, everybody needs a career, everybody needs to grow, build. You do not want to alienate yourself as an activist at workplaces. That's never going to help you in any which way. So I think somewhere the acceptance of what's happening all around and the acceptance of the goodness
I think we need to sharpen the scope of the debate. We've spoken about this in broad views. Let's get to specific things. Akash, let me come to you on this point, on whether it's just the broad that this is a generation that likes to speak up, and that's why those who weren't used to speaking up themselves are feeling uncomfortable to listen to it, or is there something more to it? Where on the other side, sometimes, and this is the refrain that I hear from the other side of the story, that there's entitlement. There's entitlement that, yes, okay, I, of course, deserve this job. I deserve all the perks. But why do you expect me to work harder than what you exactly specified?
So I think one is that I don't think it is as bad a situation as sometimes it is made out to be, right? If you take a step back and look at it, that where is this coming from? Right? I think the larger point is, and this is actually a good sign for the country as a whole, because that shows that the country is progressing, and there is a newer generation who has this choice of walking away from situations that they don't want to be in. The larger point that brings the onus to the organizations is the fact that they need to be very upfront about what they can offer, what they can't offer, so that the person on the other hand actually has a choice to make. I think as long as being very honest about it, I've seen the newer generation to be far more ambitious and far more hardworking if they actually know what they're getting into, and if they are actually aligned to what they are going to get out of it. So the disconnect I have seen is where you have not been very upfront about what you can offer, what you cannot offer, and this is also not a judgment call. It's an organization decision basis what drives their P&L. I don't see that disconnect happening very often if there is 100% transparency involved. But overall, I personally believe this is a sign of the country progressing, where the newer generation actually has this choice to walk away and to be very vocal about what they want out of their life, their career, and so on and so forth. So that's at least my view on this.
Sign of the country progressing that they're vocal, that's fine. Akash, my question is that is it a fair ask what we're seeing from the newer generation and we put out that data about a survey which says that they are unhireable? Is what is being demanded by Gen Z, so-called, is that a fair ask right now on all parameters?
I do, and I think I started my conversation with that. I don't think that point that they're unhireable is true at all.
Yeah. No, and if that happens, then you can't hire anyone because that's the bulk of your workforce.
Yeah, so that I don't think that is true at all, right? And on the contrary, so that over the last 10-15 years, the change that has happened is this. Earlier, people would not ask you this question that what am I going to get in return? Right? You have an offer in hand, great, I'm happy to be employed and I'm coming in. Today, people are asking the question that what I'm going to get in return, right? Yes, there are people who are not aligned to what you as an organization, any organization has to offer, and they're walking away. But this entire narrative that that this generation is unhireable, I don't think that entire narrative is true. And then the second part of your question is that what they're demanding is whether it is fair or not. It is an individual choice. You can choose to demand whatever you want. And whether neither the individual is obligated to work for an organization which doesn't provide what you expect, neither the organization is obligated to fulfill every demand that somebody is putting in. I think it's a two-way road, and a lot of people and organizations are getting uncomfortable with the fact that now it has become a two-way road rather than a one-way street, which it used to be at some point in time.
Okay, so that's an important thing, that there's discomfort in that it's a two-way street, that there's not this dominant, subservient attitude which you would expect from someone that you have deigned to give a job to. That was the old school that people believed in organizations. That's no longer there. Ria, come in on that. Do you think it's time for that attitude to change? And then let me flip it for you. Things like if you have worked 2 extra hours today, you will take you will come 2 hours late tomorrow. That if there is a deadline that needs to be met, or if there is a huge project that needs your help overnight, you will first negotiate what's in it for you and only then you will help. Do you think things like that work?
Isn't that common sense? If I'm putting in extra hours at work, being paid overtime or getting leave in lieu of the extra hours I worked, is what is there in every contract that an employee signs. If bosses want us to violate contracts, I think it's okay for us to get back and ask exactly what we are getting out of it, mostly because our generation also has various other avenues open to them. In case I have free time from work, I can always freelance, I can moonlight, I can upskill, I can build a personal brand for myself and be able to earn money off of that. If you're asking me to give all of that up to work extra for you, I think it's okay for me to ask what I'm getting out of it. And employers now have the opportunity to retain really good employees by offering upskilling opportunities, extra pay, good flexible work hours, etc. And actually
okay.
So
They are saying contract, that's absolutely fine. If then should that be taken as harshly if immediately from day one the new employee doesn't manage to deliver everything that's demanded of them because they need time? If they in a 8-hour shift manage to actually give work which is worth only 2 hours, then I'm saying that there's a relationship at the end of the day. Rituparna
there
smiling.
are good employees.
She's like, why has she waded into this? Rituparna, I'm saying what you have on your mind, but you want to be politically correct. Same for Akash, but okay.
There are good employees, Tamanna, and then there are good bosses, and that exists across generations.
Yeah.
I think we just now finally have a generation of employees who have been told for far too long that this is what a good employee should look like. We've heard all of these stories from our parents, etc. We are now asking, what does a good boss look like? What does a good workplace look like? And as Akash said, that two-way street is making people uncomfortable. But I think it's entirely okay for an employee, like you said, on their first day to ask why they are being asked to work overtime. Like, do you not have enough staff? Do you not have enough people on board in your organization to work? There is this underlying expectation that younger employees just do the brunt work and do overtime, etc., to somehow prove that they are good employees, and that is what we are standing against. We have better things to do. Those better things can look like anything else that is outside the realm of the workplace. I think the real question here is, why are bosses so entitled to expect employees to somehow just work all the time and not have an identity outside of that workplace? Like I said, this is a generation that has multiple
that is an
other
important
things on
point.
their mind.
I think if we had an audience right now, you'd get some claps. That's an important point. Why should you be expected not to have an identity outside the workplace? Akash, I want you to come in on that. You know, there is a generation, and I think for a large number of Indians for whom their work has been their identity, the way to lift yourself up in society, how you perform at work became the bellwether of whether you're a good person or not, and or how successful you're not. There's a generation who doesn't quite care about that. And is that at the core of the clash?
One is that I don't know if, as in I don't know what is the data on the fact that organizations don't want you to have an identity really out of the work. I think those are very different things. You have your office time and then you have your personal time. You choose to do whatever you want to do. Some people continue to choose to work and put in that extra effort. Some people choose to have their own life. I think both of them are fine. My point is actually slightly different. The way we don't want organizations to judge individual basis how they intend to spend their time and what is their priority in life at that point in time. I think from the other end also there's an expectation. There is no need to look down upon organizations which are saying here I possibly at as a particular stage of an organization where people are expected to put in a slightly more effort, right? And I'm being very upfront about it. So join us if that makes sense for you. If not, that's okay. We are not judging you. Don't judge us for it. It is as simple as that.
You know, you recently had a founder of a very successful company who put out an ad for an executive assistant and said in that ad that I will not pay you. You will have very long work hours. In fact, I will charge for you for the opportunity to work with me. And after all the virality of it and all the trolling and the feedback, he came out and said, no, we will be paying, etc. But I think what caught people's eye, Rituparna, I want you to come in on this, is that especially in smaller companies, in startup, you have this idea that you have to burn the rubber till you make the cut. You're not working in a large MNC or a large conglomerate with a huge staff. You're still at that phase of the company. And everyone is along for the ride. If that company is successful, everyone really enjoys the success. Now, over there, can you come back with this kind of rigidity that I work 2 hours extra today, I'm not going to work 2 hours tomorrow. I'm going to cut it out.
Somewhere, I think my huge problem is, and I'm old enough to say this, somewhere the huge problem is that every conversation has now become about hours. And somehow hours have become an indication of productivity. And that's where the biggest problem is. To be honest, employers or bosses or managers, and I don't know, I do empathize with the youngsters and the kind of organization, and I feel sorry for them if they're working with such organization and such bosses where their work is being equated to the number of hours that they put in. Honestly, we hire different kinds of employees. Each one of them are not robots. They're humans, they have different aptitude, ability to deliver, and some might finish a particular task within 3 hours, there's another individual might take 7 hours, and we all understand it. I think the question or the expectation for most organizations is that if you're given a task and you were expected to finish it within a reasonable amount of time, please do it. If you're taking more time, finish it and complete it, rather than again getting into the argument about the hours. If somebody finishes the work ahead of time, great. Honestly, such people do get ahead in life eventually. We know that. Now, the particular incident that you are referring to, Tamanna, I don't know how much of it was a recruitment strategy and how much of it was just a PR branding strategy. And of course, it just fell flat. Such expectations and such audacious expectations are misplaced.
Yeah. No, of course, it fell flat, and there have been others like that also came out and said the first thing that they want is hard work. Now, hard work could translate to hours, hard work could translate to great quality of work that you put in those hours. We have Ayushi back finally after a bit of a tech issue. Ayushi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, super. We've been waiting for you to pitch in on the debate. We want your point of view. We've spoken about a lot of things, but I want the other side of the story, because sometimes when you hear Gen Z, and loose terms saying this, it sounds like they have a valid point. Why should we not ask for our due? Why should we be subservient to everything that has been said? What's the other side of the story?
I completely understand where the Gen Z is coming from, and I do agree burnout isn't something anyone should have to go through. It is also important to protect your mental health and set boundaries. In fact, I do admire Gen Z that has brought these conversations to the forefront. But I think there is a difference between healthy boundaries and avoiding responsibility. For example, let's say when a deadline is set, it's not just about completing the task. It is about being a part of the team. And if one person from that team, let's say he's a Gen Z or he or she is a Gen Z, he doesn't prioritize the team's goals, I think it affects everyone else in the team who's working to, for that. So I think that's where I think the balance can sometimes feel a bit off.
I want to, that's an important point. Ria, I want you to come in on this. Ria, I want you to come in on this. It's not about hours. It's not about how much am I getting paid. It's about being part of the team. Because the fact is that if there's a team and there are some people in the team who are not fully involved, then the others lift the weight.
I think in that case, that is also a problem that is applicable across generations.
Yeah.
Here we are talking about unreasonable expectations or extra expectations that were not clear from the beginning of employment and are randomly being sprung on a person in the middle of their work. If you tell someone in the beginning, and this is something Akash pointed out, and once again, younger people who join startups are also willing to put in insane amounts of hours in a day because they feel part of the team of the startup. As long as we know what we are getting into and we sign up for that, I think most of us are okay doing the work. It's this expectation of having to also be part of things that we were never told we would have to be part of, such as extra hours, such as random team events and stuff like that. It's important to have a community, etc. at the workplace, but at least make me feel like I'm also being taken care of. Am I not part of the team, of the organization? Is my comfort, my way of work also not important enough? If I'm doing my job and the task that was set out for me, why is extra expected of me? These are questions that we are raising that a lot of bosses I don't think are answering clearly. Why is this an expectation?
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid point. Then let me come back to what has been the work culture, I think, for decades, that if you put in extra, you will grow faster. If you do the bare minimum, you will be at a bare minimum level. I mean, across organizations, your metric to rate people's performance is exactly like this, Akash. And I'm sure it is at your workplace as well. If you're doing the bare minimum, I told you to do ABC, so I did ABC, then you are rated as at that level. If there's someone who, without asking, comes in and does DEF as well, then they're rated much higher, they grow much higher.
I think slight correction, it is not given extra, it is deliver extra. So, and I think this is where what was also talked about earlier. It is not about how many hours you have put in, it is about how much you have delivered, right? So, and that is true, that's a metric across all organizations. If you deliver more, you grow faster, right? Now, how do you deliver more? I think multiple things goes into it, but yes, that bottom line is if you deliver more, you grow faster. That's the fact of it.
If you deliver more, you grow faster. Then you have to make a choice, isn't it? Do you want to deliver bare minimum and stay right there? Or do you want to grow faster? And what is the cost that it comes at? I think, Rituparna, would it be fair to say that those rules of the game don't change, no matter which generation comes, and even if we go back 100 years?
Absolutely. It's been there and it will always be there. Somebody who actually is striving more and is delivering more will outshine, because that's the culture of meritocracy and that's the culture of performance. That's how organizations have been built. And honestly, one cannot expect equitability and democracy in such aspects. I mean, anyone who puts in delivers more and delivers more tasks at a given time, they definitely will run ahead of the others. But it's a choice. I think that's the point that even Akash mentioned. It's all about choice. I do believe it's time now for organizations to be absolutely transparent in terms of what their work expectations are. Occasions where there would be need, and honestly, organizations cannot ever say that they will all need employees to work just so many hours. I mean, it's impractical. But the fact that there could be some quarter closing time where people need to, in certain functions, work, I think just bringing in and saying that upfront. And similarly, I do believe the newer generation, and given that they are capable of it, should ask as many uncomfortable questions at the hiring stage itself, so that this so-called constant bridge in communication and understanding of each other can be dealt with, because we cannot survive without either generation, honestly.
No, of course not. Of course not. The younger generation is going to be the bulk of the workforce, which is why this is not just water cooler chatter, which, we're trying to reflect here. This is going to be a serious issue for anyone in an organization, hiring people, bringing people on board, and wanting to achieve excellence. It is only sweat, blood, and tears and that extra effort which puts you ahead of competition. Now you have a choice whether you want to do it or not. But unlike maybe school, you don't get an award for just participation and showing up. You need to win that race. On the other hand, I think any managers who are thinking that they can say, because I told you so, are really living in a different era. It's time for more conversations like this, but we'll have to wrap it here. I want to thank all of you for joining us on this episode of The Big Question. To all of our viewers, tell us what you think. Do you think that the conversation we had today resonated with what you're experiencing? What do you want to see us take up? Tell us. We're listening.